in our pursuit of wanting to continue to bring you a diverse and rich variety of content here on the sites of the internet channel, and also wanting to continue to identify that we are actually a sub series of a bigger show which we actually host on twitch.tv/codex encyclopedia. But the important thing here today is that I find myself pondering about the ideas of rebellion, legend, ego, these types of things. And to not sound so grandiose, I say that it because of the people which we see on screen. Mainly this gentleman here. His name is Johnny Rotten. Call me John Lighton, preferably. And before we get to talking about any of this, I want to go ahead and address certain things in regards to this. As much as throughout this whole reaction, watching, commentating type video that we're going to do here today, uh, may have little jokes here and there or certain forms of, I don't know, opinions on any of these individuals that may be talking or what may be on the screen. I don't really have any personal bias. I will be showing it when the times are appropriate, as I actually do own a fair amount of music by these people in my record collection behind me. So there is a form of personal um, bias, but with all of them equally, if you will. The more important thing that I'm wanting to get here is that uh, there are punk icons, I guess, that some of them begrudgingly like to identify themselves as such because it kind of at this moment now where we're watching this interview is what's kind of bringing them, either their income, their cash flow, whatever you want to call it, and that's good for them. The important thing though is that there's not really a proper introduction to what happens or what is even going on. So for those of you that don't know, here is basically what's going on. This is basically a form of, I would say, a press release Q&A type thing, or at least they were attempting to do so for Epic's network, which I'm not too familiar with, but they were doing some form of promotional, the network, for a series about, punk culture as a whole. And they thought, hey, what better thing to do than to have, first off, philanthropist John Barbados, who I say philanthropist because he's put a lot of personal investment besides his work as a designer into the music side of the arts, if you will. Um, this does not really seem like it, or it seems more like he's here by association. I'm not really sure because, seeing as the research I've done on John Barbados' association with the music, I don't know how much of that would have been encouraging what John Lydon will be doing throughout the course of this. I don't even know what to call it, and you'll see why I'm having a tough time with that. But beyond that, let's go ahead and get introducing some more of the people here. Um, Over here is Duff McKagan, who some people may better know as the bassist for Guns N' Roses, who I don't own any records of Guns N' Roses, but I don't really see much wrong with them as a band. I'm not necessarily fond of Axl Rose, but Slash is a great musician. Um, with that, he also, being Duff McKagan, also played with Velvet Revolver, and I think he also collaborated with Jerry Cantrell, and he also has some notability in playing in some early New York hardcore bands, mainly from the East Coast part of the hardcore genre. And I think he played in this band, don't quote me on it, named Farts, and it's spelled with like a C. It's really absurd kind of name, but yeah, that's one reason why Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses is up here. The next person up here is Marky Ramone, who again needs not really an introduction after saying Ramone, but either way, Marky Ramone played a pretty big role in the Ramones in the Road to Ruin era, on and off and ahead on that. Once Tommy, I believe, and those that know more about the Ramones history than me, I think Tommy was taking far more of a hand behind the scenes when it came to the Ramones music production. But again, this is not me claiming overall good and great knowledge. This is just me wanting to give a general introduction to all of these people up here. Um, the next person up here, who, if you can tell by the gray little hair, lighting here and everything in the arm, and the black T-shirt, looking like a angry Steve Jobs, minus the glasses, is none other than Henry Rollins. Henry Rollins of, again, no introduction, both Rollins Band and Black Flag. And Henry Rollins, we've made jokes and said things in regards to him as for a reference before. But again, this is a person who I own some of his work, so it's not really much of another big thing where it's like, oh, I begrudgingly just, no, it's just, I don't really personally idolize anybody. In when I do look up to somebody, it's more for certain things, which we'll talk about more as this video progresses and goes on. But the other person who's not pictured here, because, and I'll give a little bit more of my opinion, and I really do invite anybody in the comments to go ahead and leave what you guys think about any of this, and what all of you, or your take maybe on any of the stuff I say in this. But the other person who's not pictured here is Donita Sparks of L7 fame, who is the singer and guitarist for, again, really stellar, amazing 90s. I mean, they're putting all of these people together in the family of punk, but really heavily associated with grunge and Riot Grrrl to some as well, just because of the music coming out of the 90s. A lot of people are familiar with L7 and Donita's work. In case you're not too familiar, saying, oh, I've actually gone out of my way to listen to L7. One of the ways that you may have been exposed to L7's work is if you've seen Natural Born Killers. Shit List is the song that Mallory Knox basically beats up those guys in the opening sequence on to that film. And When We Pretend That We're Dead, I believe, plays on Radio X in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And the earlier copies, I haven't played the awful definitive edition, but the important thing that I wanted to get to here is that Donita Sparks has just as much, if not just the bigger role as well, in the shaping of a lot of the things that these people are up here on the stage for. And I just wanted to give her proper part in that, because again, you guys will draw your own conclusion on that. And I will also admit I am a little biased, and which is why I also kind of felt moved to do this as well, because the first time I had seen this years ago, and this popped up on my recommended as well today, which is why I felt moved to do it. I kind of is an understatement. I felt sort of offended, not even just for Donita, but even like Rollins and McKagan's sake, which they've all had to deal with their own fair share of like really hard personalities here. But today we're going to be treated to, again, what should have and maybe was intended to be an interview go completely off the rails within seconds, like now.
Bands that were doing the best we could according to our individual determinologies. Occasionally, we met as friends.
I saw you in 2010, dude.
Tour.
At Coachella.
Let me tell you, that was probably where we became major enemies too.
Johnny, I yelled for you to play Pop Tones.
Because it's like that. Fucking rock and roll is a disgusting concept. What we wanted was to break away from that and be good fucking fellas with each other. It never happened like that. Boys
you fought
girls.
with everybody,
it really
dude.
Didn't. It became so competitive and lost in its own fucking bullshit. But
look at Henry right here.
Punk, all right, where's that term come from? I'll tell you, it wasn't when Iggy was running around. It was
Big up Iggy Pop.
Caroline Coon put this expression together. And it was a complete insult, right? In Melody Maker, a British magazine, she had the audacity to call me king of the punks. And I bothered to find out what that meant. Well, hello, I'm John. I ain't no fucker's toy boy. All right?
Okay.
And that was punk. And at the same time, you've got reggae running around there, Rastafari and Natty Dread. And Bob Marley's having to deal with Natty Dread. That was a complete insult to him. But he turned it upside down. And that's what we did too.
Yeah.
You know, on that, he's speaking poetically, but with the we part and everything. But there is truth to it, in that kind of sentiment. You know, if you will, depending on how much you care or really have an interest in punk. There's other bands from that era adjacent to the Sex Pistols and Johnny Rotten here, and I'll call him Johnny Rotten just for the sake of the era of which he was pertaining to at this moment I'm speaking about. But yeah, a lot of them were pretty disillusioned with the fact that, again, something had happened in the 60s that people here in America think only really affected them in another country, but it was pretty bad pretty much everywhere, you know, because overall there was like an ideological war being fought. I don't know. I don't think that really matters because it's totally not affecting us still now. The more important thing is that before then there was already something in the UK happening, and I can't speak too much of it, but for a lot of the people that later on became people, I guess, that are, and I say I guess because there always is, and there will probably be in the comments people arguing things, is, again, I want to remind, I am not pertaining to say and be the ultimate know-all knowledge of any of these things. But as I was saying, back to this, is a lot of these people, not just people that were making punk music, but people that ended up making music in the mid to late 70s in the UK that weren't of already a high status or stature, and you know, in the charts, like the Pink Floyds, you know, the Led Zeppelins, those types of bands, which I'm not speaking ill of, as I also own records by some of those bands. But what I'm saying is the bands that weren't quite making it, they had this form of disillusionment, and they were still growing up amongst the ruins and rubble of dilapidated buildings that had been bombed during the World War II era. And you know, along in those times, again, and I'm not pertaining to also be really good and great on my history here, especially not my UK history, but from what I've gathered from various people, including Don Letts of Big Audio Dynamite, and just overall an immense influential figure amongst the UK, not just punk, ska, dub, he's an immense overall creative figure, I would say, within the last 60 years, creatively in general. But again, a lot of them have basically, in their own differentiating ways, have spoken to the fact that things, again, such as like how he was saying things like Natty Dread, or even like how before the skinhead movement had been basically hijacked by white supremacists and everything, were all basically things that originally had started out as some form of, I guess, slurs or epithets towards these, whether it was classes of people or whether it was people that were interested in just a particular form of the arts, because it wouldn't just pertain to people that were just like, oh, into certain music, you know. Some of the things in which he speaks of, that I do invite people to look up more into, with according to like the Bob Marley thing, is certain things in which the press would write, things that would, looking at it now, and I'm glad that John does bring this up to a degree, we're pretty condescending and disrespectful towards the type of like culture of Rastafari, which again, going back to the video that I've also done in another section here on the sounds where I talk about my records and talking about the Bad Brains, it's a little, again, thing where it's problematic, and it's in the same vein as the Christianity thing of how much would you or do you want to excuse certain things like that. Now, getting back to all this, yeah, I just want to give some credibility to what he's speaking of here, because if I was Mr. Lydon't here, I would kind of have talked about that a little more. But he's again gonna derail. Sorry about my derailment, but here we go.
Fucking side.
Absolutely. So, one thing I was wondering, John Barbados, you made that there's so many different opinions in here, like John's here. What did you learn about punk from working on this?
What did I learn?
Oh,
Are you fucking joking?
This is the sad thing. John, and if they had gotten another one of the, depending on which Ramon they would have gotten, they would have had another John up here. Like, John is such a common name of the era, of the time that there was a lot of them that named John, you know. I think, whatever, I don't want to get into talking about other people that aren't up here on the stage, but here we go. They were asking John Barbados a question, who, again, John Barbados has worked pretty closely with a lot of different musical foundations, and he's put in a lot of money, and again, give or take whatever any of you may feel about designers and clothing and fashion or anything, it's pretty commendable to see somebody that still, again, will try to encourage people of different heights and skills and backgrounds, because it's not just him being up here being like, oh, I'm here with the rock stars. There's been other stuff where I'm like, okay, you do get down with different types of the arts, but anyways, sorry, Mr. Barbados, that Johnny Rotten had to be John Lydon't here.
Look to your left.
He's talking to me.
Talking to your pal from on the left right there, right behind
But
you.
John Lydon's drunk,
Wait,
though.
Fella next to you, can you tell him?
Fella next to you.
Henry's here.
Oh my God, fella next to you. That's so awful. Look at Henry. Henry's like, oh my God, I'm gonna talk about this on my tour for like 2-3 hours. I'm gonna be like, oh my God, score. I got John Lydon't to call me guy next to you.
Henry. Hello, Henry. Right. We ain't ever met before. No, sir. No, we ain't, have we? Right. You've said silly things, but excellently good things too. Yes.
And you call Black Flag a bunch of suburban rich kids, and we want to tear your ears off.
You should have done some research, John. Seriously, because these guys were not suburban rich kids. This guy's friend, unfortunately, got basically murdered in front of him, and the cops did basically, I don't know. You guys should look it up. It's really messed up. But look up. It's even hard to talk about. I don't even want to talk about that. It's messed up.
Yes, I did, but I didn't like the fucking music. It was boring and unoriginal. Right? You know, bang, 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 bang. It's like when Sex Pistols came to you, you ain't heard anything that fucking good, and you know it.
But the different band you.
And you could hear every single word clearly, and those words.
You want to rebut?
Put me
Henry
in
Slate.
the Houses of Parliament under the traitors and treasons. Right?
Somebody. What?
Which at that time carried a fucking death penalty. So don't talk black flag, pink flag, grey flag.
In the interest of fairness, John, Henry, what did the Sex Pistols mean to you?
I remember I saw a picture of young John. He's wearing a Pink Floyd t-shirt, and on top of the Pink Floyd part, someone had written, "I hate." So it says,
someone was me, mate.
Okay. When I saw that
And
photo,
I borrowed that shirt to the drummer, too.
I'll finish in a second.
Just so you know.
I saw that shirt, and I went, oh. And I never thought about music the same again.
Yeah, it was a good idea,
It was a great idea.
Yeah. And guess what? It was such a good idea that I ended up having a really good relationship with
People on 4chan drunk posting.
It
was a really good idea.
Nobody's ever talked to us like that. Hey, Don't you get it? That's punk, right? We don't hate each other. We like open debate.
Wow, you open debate,
Mr.
huh?
Barbados, as I was asking before, what
hello.
what
That didn't even work.
open debate. What were the things? What were your takeaways from this documentary?
Well, there's a lot of passion.
Yes, I think so.
A lot of angst. As Vivian used to say, fashion is a passion. I remember, but she's...
Vivian Westwood, you know, again, give or take whatever you guys think about her. Great and phenomenal designer, and at least if you care about the fashion aspect of the arts. But really great designer, at least to me personally. I like her work. And she took a role in helping craft the image that Johnny has basically ran with for the rest of his life, which, you know, I can't necessarily give her all the credit, but the clothes that a lot of people saw, obviously, and this is nothing revelatory to people that already know about the Sex Pistols, but, you know, they were pretty much the British punk equivalent of a K-pop band at the time, if you will. They were just kind of put together. And with that, they also were told how to dress and everything. And along with Malcolm McLaren, who we may be speaking more of in the future here on Sites of the Internet. And you never know. As again, Malcolm McLaren tends to have... He was, I would say, Malcolm McLaren, the best way I could compare him to anything is anybody that knows about American politics and nerds out on that. He was basically the art version of Roger Stone, you know. He was basically that, and he was the manager of the Sex Pistols and also did something with, I believe, was the New York Dolls. He kind of helped destroy whatever was left of them. And he tries to say he created, but he also manufactured and destroyed the Sex Pistols, had a thing with Bow Wow Wow. It's a really crazy thing as to how much, again, Malcolm McLaren has also played a role in the arts as well and in crafting them. But going back to this, yeah, he's just name-dropping Vivian Westwood, who basically put a lot of their wardrobes together.
Stole that terminology, didn't she? This is the trouble. Growing up as a Sex Pistol, you know, with Malcolm and Vivian pretending they were the geniuses above us all.
They weren't really geniuses. Kids, right? Yeah, exactly. They were dressing you and giving you guys instruments and stuff.
Oh, fuck off, man. Johnny Rotten tells it like it is, right? Be done with it.
Well, we could debate the instrument thing to a degree. Some of them were already playing stuff.
No bullshit, right? If I'm going to, like, say thanks to good songwriters, you know what I'd look at first? Ray Davies and the Kinks. Right? That would be my culture.
No, they're right.
Iggy said that in the documentary too. Iggy gave credit to Ray.
Yeah, but I was lying then.
Well, what I was wondering is we could go down the panel here. What was? No,
I'm not joking. Yeah. I love good songwriters.
Absolutely.
In the
Here's Danita. Hey, Danita. I just wanted to say hi because unfortunately you don't get addressed much because of Johnny here.
The animal.
So, what I wanted
all of these fantastic things that were precursors.
John, I wanted to ask everybody. You said that Ray Davies inspired you. Let's go down. Let's do Henry and Duff and everyone. What was the first punk that turned you? What turned you on to punk? What was it? Was it a band? Was it a song?
Wait. I need you to redirect that question because you're presuming Ray Davies was a punk.
Well, Iggy said that Ray Davies was the first thing he heard like that.
Is Iggy a punk?
It's all arbitrary, homie.
Is Iggy Pop a punk?
I think so.
How much time did he do in jail?
Henry.
He went to a psych ward, and why does that matter, Johnny?
With a harder band.
If you want to get
why does that even matter? Lydon's tripping.
A song or a band that turned you on to punk? What was the moment?
There's a guy in my neighborhood named Roberto Burton, and he had his ear to the ground. He always had the cool records. And I was telling him one day at the skate ramp how my Ted Nugent and Steve Miller Records were not addressing my young man anger issues. And he said, come to my house, I'm a doctor. And he gave me the Sex Pistols album, the first Clash album, the first Ramones album. He said, return these tomorrow in one piece. And I played them and I went, oh, so that's how it can be. And that was my first indoctrination. And then I saw the Clash play Feb 15, 1979 with Bo Diddley opening and standing right in front of them. That was a transformative experience.
So, okay, out of all these bands, out of any of these bands, I gotta say that my biggest bias and my biggest kind of standing to a degree is like the work the Clash all like they did up to like, you know, the Cut the Crap era. I don't really consider that, and even they don't. So they wouldn't blame me. But yeah, the Clash are hugely influential to me. And one of the reasons why is because of things like with what he just mentioned, which is, again, if you're a music nerd, you know, the Clash and Bo Diddley, what the hell kind of lineup is that, you know? And like, it wasn't just that. They would do stuff like bring on bands like, they also had the Misfits once, when the Misfits weren't even releasing, they hadn't even released their first album yet. And they also had Suicide, or they at least tried to have Suicide on in New York during their sold out like Bond's Casino shows. They went ahead and also had like, I think it was like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five or something like that. And like, yeah, yeah, it was them. And I think they were like, Joe Strummer had to stop what he was doing backstage while, you know, they were trying to open up because people were not having it, and Joe Strummer would go out there and support these things. He, like, you know, overall as a band and everything, and not as individuals, I think, like, because again, I don't really personally idolize any one individual in any of these regards, but again, as artists, the Clash really are influential to me in the degree of how they would approach many of the things. I mean, a lot of their albums, just even looking at it now, you know, some people, when they speak about, at least to me personally, I always feel that when people speak about the idea that punk isn't just a sound, it's more of a style and an energy or an idea or a form of thinking. You know, I think part of that grew from the nucleus that the Clash started. To me personally, again, I believe that when it comes to that kind of term, and I just wanted to speak on that a little personally because yes, they are influential to me, and Henry is one of the people that bring them up, and they get brought up very little again throughout this because Johnny wants to decide to speak about Johnny, but I just wanted to kind of throw that little bit in because yeah, that's just one part. I just whatever you think and feel about punk, I just felt that's something that I wanted to note on this video.
Wow.
Having seen Led Zeppelin like the year before. So
Amazing. What about you, Duff? What got you into punk?
It was the same thing. Pistols record, Clash first record.
Records? We only had one.
We had records. Yeah, well, I said the Pistols record.
I know, man.
Yeah. So,
I know.
and then this West Coast thing started to develop. Like in my hometown of Seattle,
Yeah.
there was the Mentors and the Lydon't and DOA were this band that started a tour.
Yep.
And they would come
DOA.
down, and DOA became like our fucking, there was only like 50 of us, but they were like our Kiss. They were everything, and they were, they had this list of like
I think
clubs to
DOA is
go
still going
tour,
around
and they
today.
passed this list on, and we were all 14 years old, and my first gig ever was opening for fucking Black Flag with Ron Ray singing, and then seeing Dez come in, and then where I saw that '79 Clash tour before London Calling. People were pogoing, and a yellow-coated security guy punched a pogoer in the nose and broke his nose, and Strummer stopped the show.
Wow,
And he
that's
said, there's no barrier between you and I, you know, the band and the crowd. We're all in this together. And that fucking changed everything for me.
See, this is where a lot of people that when they talked about the whole awful tragedy that happened at Astroworld, and they were trying to basically crap on hip-hop music unjustly for the lack of care and neglect of an organization and an artist putting together a multi-million-dollar you know, production together. But going back to what he's speaking about, a Joe Strummer regard, yeah, he was one of those people that back in the day, if, you know, there is a limit to certain things, and he would never shy away from stopping a show or from addressing somebody like an unruly bouncer, you know, and it's great to have that, especially when, again, um, I don't necessarily know these type of shows, like how and what the age range were, but even today, within the last 15 years and shit, they're just. And again, this has nothing to even do with the Astroworld thing, but there should definitely be more like better measures done in how some of these securities or people try to. It's I don't know. This could be a conversation to be had on a different day on a different form of video, not related to sites of the internet. But yeah, it's kind of troubling to kind of go to shows and want to cut loose a little and have to fear that some may take it too far.
And I saw when this guy came in for the first time in Seattle, new singer, this new guy from fucking DC, SOA, it was, Henry Rollins. He's gonna be the singer, and Des moved to rhythm guitar, and I was in the band that actually opened for them that night in Seattle. And Henry, I saw him prepare for the show, like it was intense, it was fucking real and scary, and things were gonna happen. And I just watched him the whole
Look at
day,
him.
like
He's
not
so
getting too
drunk
close
as
because
hell. He's
some
all-
bullshit might happen, and he might fucking punch me. But anyhow, watching that formation of Black Flag was another transformative gig for me.
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great one.
See, everything he's saying is absolutely excellent.
I agree.
And I
100%.
love it. I came from England from a different background, right? With different bands, and I don't want to come over as arrogant, and neither does this fella.
No,
I'm
you
telling
don't come off as arrogant
the
at all.
history of what influenced us. And, oh my God,
Marky.
God bless every single
Hi, Marky.
band.
Hey, Marky, you want
I
to
know
go?
that
How are you?
got Marky
Well, I just want to say that in 1975-74,
This didn't have Marky, though. This is still Tommy era, but
Detroit.
Big up
That's when
Ramones.
punk started. So if it wasn't for that first Ramones album, punk would not have been solidified. And that was in CBGB's.
To a degree.
Along with Blondie, the Heartbreakers, and before that, the New York Dolls. And then the Ramones went to England and they started their punk scene. And then the rest is history. And I'm not going to argue about anything. Thank God we got the music.
Yes.
And that's the most important thing. Doesn't matter where it comes from, LA, New York, England. This is the best music that was ever
Canada,
out there, and it still
Mexico.
is. And I just want to
Some of the other places that have made some really good notable
It
punk.
has nothing to do with what was going on over here on the screen. Donald Trump,
Eastern
fuck
Europe.
off.
Yeah.
That's it. But you know,
Johnny Ramone
I
like
mean,
turning in his grave.
the first
What did you
Pistols
say?
album kicked ass. The first Ramones album kicked ass. The first Blondie album kicked ass. The Heartbreakers kicked ass. The Clash. So there was something.
Why do you think politics matter?
Something.
So, and if he's watching and watches this at any point, because I wouldn't put it over them to look up online, like, has anybody made any form of reaction or anything to this? But I think what he's talking about, the Heartbreakers, is the infamous, so let me see here if I can find it right off. So I think he's talking about Johnny and the Heartbreakers, which is something that, again, kind of is associated to the New York Dolls. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there. But one thing that's notable about the Heartbreakers is that they actually were one of the few rock bands that, along with like NWA, they had like actual literal gang affiliation with, even in their music. Even their album was, I think, had a coded message or something of like a gang thing. But yeah, no, I just wanted to just mention that out because yeah, Johnny and the Heartbreakers, I would say pretty notable, influential band. Not to me necessarily personally. I do enjoy their work, but I would say to the molding of what has become, I guess, notably to the masses, known as the punk sound and style.
Something for
Is there
everybody.
anything in the Ramones that was remotely political?
No, we were a
Up
fun
until
band.
right
Actually, both of you guys are wrong. There's actually a pretty good amount of subtleness that was really well and packaged by the Ramones that didn't even have to go to the levels of another great band, the Dead Kennedys. But what the Ramones would do is they were a little clever in their ways that they would go about being somewhat political, if you will, because there were actually differentiating political viewpoints in the Ramones, which that's not the important point, but. And I am like going from having listened to a podcast called No Dogs in Space, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. But the important thing here is that Joey's Ramones experience with going to psychiatric hospital, or I believe I don't know if it was necessarily a psychiatric hospital or spent time in the psychiatric ward of a hospital, but he had gotten into a relationship with a person of color, and the person of color's parents, ironically enough, were not about her dating somebody who was white or Jewish. So, Joey having the sense of humor, I believe, kind of started some of the ideas that would become the KKK took my baby away. As that relationship didn't necessarily end so well, if I recall correctly. Also, Bonzo Goes to DC was a heavily political song as well, if I recall correctly. It was like the Ramones' anti-Reagan song, which is ironic, seeing as how Johnny was a Reaganite supporter, which is so weird still to this day to think about that. But again, both of you, Marky, Johnny, you guys are both wrong on that. You guys are both wrong, buddies. You guys should take a chill pill and relax, because he's about to pop off. He's had enough of this, dude. He's had enough of, and this is the referee. Like, John Barbados has turned into Dana White, basically, of the UFC at this point right here.
We were a fun band. We wanted people to have
But
fun.
they were fun. I love the
thing
Ramones.
is,
They're a fun band.
There's something for everybody, and that's what's important.
You know,
There was
really.
every band was different. Every band had something to say and something to offer.
I love my world, right?
That's it.
And the one thing I've always known is, and you've always known this about me, don't fucking trust a politician. And if there's anything...
Well, that's
And
what
he's
I
a
said
Trump
about
supporter.
Trump.
Yeah, there we go.
businessman.
I have another question for.
Let's hear a girl talk. Come on.
I cannot speak. I cannot speak.
Yay, Danita.
Anita,
Yes.
Oh,
Would you
Iggy,
please
you
tell
did
me-
turn up.
would you please tell me how you got into punk?
You're Iggy.
Danita,
I'll take it.
You've had electrolysis.
I just want to say that I came to. I knew about the Ramones and the Sex Pistols before I knew about Iggy and the MC5. So, like, as a teenager, those were the two bands that, like, were my youthquake, earthquake, and
Oh my God, I've just realized.
it was amazing. And hang on, Tiger. Take it easy, Tiger. Let the broad speak for a second. Okay, so
I want you to know I'm a married man.
what was cool when I discovered these bands was, like, there was such horrible music on the radio. It was god awful. It was the 70s, the mid late 70s, and it was also boring and like over 30s music. It was just terrible. And then when I heard the Ramones, I was like, oh my God, this is like for teenagers. Oh, it's speaking to me. It's teenage. It's fun. I want to dance to it. And then when I heard the Sex Pistols, I was like, I am fucking terrified of this band and I love it. So So, you know, it was like the Sex Pistols and X-Ray Specs, they had such stuff to say.
Another great band,
And
X-Ray Specs.
the Ramones and Blondie and the B-52s, let's not forget them. And, you know, that was like
People are
super
starting to give them more
fun
credit
and,
now, so.
Youth. So that's what my take on it.
That's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, you know,
That is
in
actually,
punk, you know, there were other
listen,
bands
whoa,
that
is
had punk
exactly
elements.
Here we go. I'm just gonna
right.
talk
You
over them
have
too,
to
just because you know
Remember the
that's just
band?
what
In
makes
the
it even
time
worse.
of
I'm just playing.
We
7 and
had
7 is
variables.
Talk Music Machine. 7 and 7 is by Arthur Lee. Those songs were definitely the precursor to all this stuff. You know, and in my opinion, of course, again, the Kinks, all day and all the night. You really got me. And that heavy guitar sound. And that was punk to me. And every band had at least 1 or 2 songs in the 60s that had a punk element to it. Nowadays, even the Ramones did it. Even the Pistols did it. They did 60s covers of songs because they had great hits. They had
Johnny,
good
you
stuff,
totally
and
did
so
some
the
60s
Ramones got
covers,
up,
dude.
And we did Do You Want to Dance?
Shut up,
Let's
mate.
Dance.
Don't cover
And that
nothing.
Stepping Stone,
Fucking
Stepping Stone, Stepping Stone,
Don't talk rubbish.
Stepping Stone. You did
I
Stepping
did
Stone.
no cover of nothing.
Stepping Stone.
Yeah, and turned it upside
Okay,
down.
all right, no, it's
inside
great.
That's the point, Johnny. Listen to what he's saying. He's saying you covered it. He's saying people covered it. The same way an amazing band like Devo took I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones and made it listenable. You took Stepping Stone, and you also did Roadrunner, by the way, and you made them a little more fun, at least to some. Chill out. What the hell, man?
Okay, don't argue with me. I'm not the enemy, okay?
So punk.
You weren't even in the fucking band.
Unbelievable.
You're a Johnny come lately.
Yeah, okay. No, you're a Johnny come.
He played in the Road to Ruin album. Do you know what you're even saying?
Hey, where'd you get that wig?
Hey, if it wasn't for the fucking Ramones, you'd be nowhere. You'd be fucking doing fish and chips somewhere.
Said the groupie.
Oh, I love that line.
I love the Ramones.
Yeah, I love the Ramones.
But I love
okay.
status quo more.
Good for you. I believe
Okay.
you.
I have a question over
I
here
believe you.
for Danita. I have a question for Danita.
All right.
Yes.
I'll take it.
In the
What do you
doc, there was Joan Jett
The
talking
problem
about
with
the
this
Roadrunner.
agenda is that he's propagating,
I have a question
and
for
he's
Danita.
not even an original Ramon, but he's propagating
well,
I know,
this idea.
but I did the Blank
that the
Generation album with
Sex
Richard
Pistols
Hell.
copied the
And you
Ramones.
took his image, and all you guys took Richard Hell's image. That's all you did.
The thing.
Yeah, and you're still covering your
You
fucking
took, and
ears,
that's all you
idiot.
fucking did was take Richard Hell's
You're not
image.
listening.
Getting away from punk and looking at things at another in another light, if you will. Can any of you watching this right now imagine what it's going to be like in another 20, 30 years if the world and society still, well, the world will still be here, but if society is still around, or if we still have technology, you know, if a EMP or like I don't know, a solar flare doesn't ruin the entire electrical grid and everything as we know it. Do you guys wonder, like, in 30 years, the subgenre cultures that are like going on right now, like them having a retrospect, like the female, like the ladies of hip hop, you know, like Cardi and like Rico Nasty and like Megan Thee Stallion, and like having like, you know, Young M.A. and having like all types of like the women up here on stage and like having them all just talk, like, you know, like Jean Grey, like, you know, anybody that you guys can get from like the hip hop scale like that, or like having like the trap rapper / SoundCloud rappers, like you know, having everybody from like Young Lean to like Travis Scott, and like they're all older, you know, and just up here trying to talk about their stuff. Like, how would that play out? Because like, you know, people will say, oh, you know, this punk and they're old and these old boomers now, you know, and but it's like I'm really looking forward to, hopefully, if we're all still around, seeing how some of that stuff's gonna go down. Because, man, it's gonna be fun.
You did the Blank Generation album, and that's all you did.
All right.
That's all you did.
Well,
And Sid Vicious was the star.
that's
Oh, I mean, they do sell a lot of posters with Sid Vicious's face that say Sex Pistols, Johnny. So he got you there, and you guys will, if you guys look up any pictures of like Richard Hell, Blank Generation, yeah, it's basically how Johnny Rotten looked in the beginning of the Sex Pistols era, which I don't know if that was his idea, because he'll claim whenever it's convenient for Johnny, he'll say, "Oh yeah, I thought of that. That was my idea," or whenever it's like, "Oh no, that was stupid. That was Vivian and Malcolm's idea," or whatever. He'll say, but whatever, you know, that's just a thing that in this little low blow criticism he's trying to give Johnny to bring him down a peg. Yeah, he's kind of speaking a little sprinkles of a little bit of truth wrapped in a low blow here. But see what I mean about the whole Danita thing? Danita had the question, and they just didn't. They just in a like again. I know where Marky's, but just shut up. Johnny's already bad. Just shut up, Marky.
That's right. He was the star of the band.
He was the star
best.
for arsehole
He was
fake
great.
idiots like
He
you.
was great.
Enjoy your
He
drugs.
kicked ass.
Fucking have a happy
He
death.
kicked ass.
so to
You
conclude.
crazy
And Glenn
fuck.
Matlock wrote all the songs too.
Okay.
You know,
Mark,
there you
Mark,
go.
Mark, John,
Where's
Mark,
Glenn
John.
Matlock?
Let's end this Jerry Springer episode for a
Where's
second.
Glenn Matlock? Come on.
What I want to propagate here, so you all completely understand. Punk music for me was positive, proof positive that we could change our lives by music, meaning what we said, attack the
Is he gonna sell us, like,
political
NFTs or something?
systems.
Chill out.
This daft cunt.
How come you wait?
Is in your fucking drugs.
Hey, you talk the talk, but you didn't do the walk.
All right.
Just like the MC5.
Take a pause.
Hello, Johnny Roy never did the walk.
He didn't.
Okay, this is one of the big reasons, and I know we've already gone for a while here in a video. It's 24 minutes, and I've been recording for about 47 minutes now. But one of the big, when there are arguments that because they're two old boomers, that one of them happens to be drunk and the other one is just irritated and not being able to think quick on his feet in regards to his low blow criticism. Now, if they're really truly waving that punk flag here that they're still trying to identify after as long as the genres existed, I want to go ahead and say that one of the things that he's referring and referencing is in the regards to how very comparable to the idea of like how people are selling the idea of NFTs to people, if you will, of an artist can go ahead and they can, you know, empower themselves and do these things. And I'm not speaking ill of NFTs, if you will, in this instance, but I'm using them merely as an example for this. You know, Johnny here, who is actually another big influence of mine to a degree, is part of a band that, again, depending on who you are watching, you may or may not know much of, but one of my favorite albums of all time is Flowers of Romance by his band he did after the Sex Pistols, named Public Image Limited, who also goes by PIL. And honestly, one of the things that is really funny in the ways that I think, you know, we all continue to go into patterns sociologically. I don't know if that's the correct word, but whether it's within the arts, business, just overall, is just how we continue to return to different times, or different spirits of the past to be more poetic or romantic continue to either reverberate or want to continue to creep back up, you know. And why do I say this? Well, the thing with Public Image Limited that I think, and I can't speak for John Lydon, but the way I always took what um, John, along with any of the artists and musicians that collaborated and contributed to any of the different eras of Public Image Limited, where and are still trying to be about in a regard and in a way is about being your own, you know, business, if you will, to a degree. Which I only say that as well because John, who again I don't know personally, and I'm not him. I can't, and this is no degree of defense mechanism. Could probably be a reason as to why he stands Donald Trump for the as much as he stands him, and that's just to put it lightly, I suppose. Um, the other thing in which I want to mention is that again, there are interviews of John's that we'll do on other editions of Sites of the Internet of the era of the 80s, in which the interviews that are being done during the era of Public Image Limited are, I guess, sort of snide or condescending, smug, trying to act as a joke, and John trying to present what Public Image Limited was as more than just necessarily a band and doing merch and doing these kind of things. But one thing I will say in defense of the media in this regard as well, to be totally and equally fair in this, is that John could have made things a little easier in explaining some of these things. Now, where does this tie in with the MC5 and the put down their marquee kind of threw at Johnny here? Is that the MC5 were a pivotal band of the late 60s, along with like the Stooges and, you know, other bands that give, you know, given a lot of credit for having kind of jump started a lot of the, you know, punk movement and everything. But I really do encourage people to do their own research on the MC5's history and everything if you guys are interested in music history at all and like this kind of music. But um, let's just say that the MC5 weren't fully honest, and like at least some of the members weren't fully honest about their intentions about trying to be self-sustainable, manageable, a kind of thing of that nature, if you will. And yeah, he's basically trying to compare it to that, but I don't, and I don't know. I mean, he's Johnny Rotten's done commercials for like butter and like other types of things, but that is not a deterrent for me to think that he's on the same equal level as somebody like what the MC5 were doing, because the MC5 were trying to make money to get cars and to do things. John doesn't really come off as a person who does that. So again, I'm not a supporter of him being a supporter of Trump per se. I wish he wouldn't necessarily look at things at a certain light to just, but you know, it's like that one sketch that Saturday Night Live did, and I am actually oddly quoting them because for once they did a sketch that was funny, or at least I find it funny. But they were making fun of this era of punk, and they were making fun of the guy that Fred Armisen plays. That I think they were maybe making fun of a bit of Johnny Rotten, but I don't. Johnny wasn't a Thatcher person, or you guys can correct me if he was or did anything like that. But during again after this era of punk happened, which was the era, and why this also goes back to Public Image Limited, in the 80s when post-punk and a lot of like what people also called new wave and stuff was happening. There was a lot of concerns for people because certain things were happening politically that, you know, some will say, I don't know why people should have been concerned. You know, a certain person getting elected into office in both the UK and both America. I don't know, some people that kind of pay attention and look at things, there was certain concerns, so they wanted to be a little bit more on their own, not only just people in the punk movement, but even going out to like artists who already were doing this by themselves as well, like the industrial artists like Throbbing Gristle, and I'm trying to pull out one of the public, I mean, one of the Psychic TV records, but even they already in that side of music were already going out of their way to, you know, have their own running networks of it's kind of odd to put it in this way, networks of entertainment and media and information of all kinds and sorts. And the same thing with the DIY culture that heavily gets attributed to punk, you know, and later to be indie culture as well, going into what people consider college rock up until like the late 2010s, but or maybe mid 2010s. But again, how this all tied up was, again, there was people during that time that were in support of Thatcher or Reagan for similar reasons that weren't already of a certain stature or privilege, if you will. And this is not in defense of anything or anybody's decisions on how they voted either in the past elections of the 2016 era or of Brexit or of anything, but it's just kind of the facts of how things are to explain my personal take on why I think, as much as I am not justifying or condoning or anything, why I think somebody like Marky made the blow at Johnny in regards to the whole, well, you talked the talk, but you didn't walk the walk, which is kind of rich coming from him as well, since I think one of the most heavily paid people associated to the Ramones is the person who designed their logo, if I recall that correctly. The only person who, to a degree, has been really self-sustainable, like entirely, or the two people on stage, personally to me, that I see that is Rollins and over here with Donita Sparks. So it's funny how they spoke the loudest of this, yet they really had, if I have to be really honest, they had the least to show for any of that. But because one of them was a Ramone and one of them was a Sex Pistol, the voices got to be louder.
He just talked. He didn't do the walk. He was down the street protesting like the MC5.
What? Look at you.
That's
you look
it,
like
right?
heavy metal fucking
whatever the fuck, okay? Sit
take
the
a little
fuck
pause.
down.
This is so punk rock, ladies and gentlemen. This is fucking punk
You
rock.
want it?
Yeah.
Right
You got
here.
it.
Unpolished, unrehearsed, off the fucking rails.
Denise, yeah.
Just like this awful
I
show.
wanted to ask you, just in the interest of wrapping up, what gives
me the right to be up here?
what gives you hope for punk? What punk has been inspiring you? Let's see what.
What gives me hope for punk is that people still get really pissed off about stuff, and yet people can still laugh at people getting, you know, upset, and it's a good time.
I'm sorry that all
time.
ended up in a fiasco, but hello, that's what punk music is.
All right, let's ask the next. Duff, what gives you hope for?
You instigated it!
Are there any bands right now that are really inspiring you that are punk? Like, what gives you hope for punk, Duff?
What's that?
What punk music is inspiring you right now, Duff?
Well, I'm lucky to have two daughters, 21 and 18, who turned me on to whatever the fuck is new. I love the Horrors. I love my daughter's band, the Pink Slips, Death Grips.
Duff McKagan's a real one for identifying, again, the idea of punk not to a sound but a style, because the Horrors, again, if you've ever listened to them, may not necessarily be what you identify as punk, but they have a really punk spirit. They refuse to necessarily just stay stagnant to one particular sound, and I also am glad to have them amongst my collection of records. And Pink Slips are another great, I can't again speak too glowingly about them, as I have not enough familiarity as to Mr. McKagan's work, but yeah, Pink Slips are another great band, but the Death Grips thing was one thing when I first listened to it. I was like, oh, okay, McKagan gets it. That's neat, which is awesome to see somebody that you may not necessarily be fond of their music entirely, still see how their music's great, but can see why, because every artist or every musician that plays a part in a project or a band or a collaboration plays an important role. And hearing him say it really said a lot about now thinking back to any of the Guns N' Roses songs or some of the Velvet Revolver tracks or some of the how he would have the sensibility or the palette for something like Death Grips, which is nice to kind of also hear on.
There's a lot of energy. I go to these fucking shows in Echo Park in downtown, and I got to go see an old cruster last Saturday. Walter Lure play Heartbreaker shows. It was fucking great. But there's a whole new youth movement who are doing. I think Johnny was alluding to, and the things that I experienced watching Henry and watching all my heroes and seeing Iggy as a fucking young kid. And the Pistols were so fucking exotic, talking about, the songs were about political things. I had no idea what, who the Queen was or any of that shit, but it opened me up to all of that stuff, to look into it. And so did Stiff Little Fingers. When my mom came into the bedroom, I was listening to Stiff Little Fingers and Suspect Device, and she started crying. And we're an Irish family, and these boys are going through the troubles, and a Suspect Device is a bomb.
Yeah.
And anyhow, so there's a great, in Los Angeles and Seattle, there's great young punk rock, or whatever. Somebody alluded to on the documentary. I think it was Henry. Like it's not genre specific. It's just a bunch of bands with a bunch of different ideas, dropping hip hop beats or not, or just playing fucking straight up punk rock, or writing great songs. And I get to see it through my daughter's. I get to go to these shows.
That's great.
Hey,
Henry, is there any
he's really
punk that's really
fucking good,
inspiring
this
you right
fella.
now?
There's a lot of really...
The point being how different we all are.
Absolutely.
And you must not forget that we have never ourselves as bands viewed each other in
I know I'm just letting this go on,
competition.
but it's just
this
because
is something that Press created for us.
Right.
Come on, see here, baby. I haven't got a job. What?
Well, let's end with
My
a
job
Henry.
is to educate you.
Let's end with.
I can't hear
let's-
you. Stop
let's just-
shouting like a fucking Marxist.
Let's just
Will you come in the middle and talk?
Let's let Henry.
because he doesn't shout.
How debate is.
John.
Stop it. You know I love your tits.
All right. Oh, Henry, what?
Uh,
Come on, John. Do you want to?
Yeah,
That was about.
if I can have like just 20 seconds. One of the best things that's happening in punk rock right now is you have a lot of women in bands, and a lot of bands in Australia that are worth checking out. There's a great band called BB and the Blips, and a band called the Cable Ties, and they have fantastic angry women singers.
Cable Ties is a pretty good band.
There's a great Australian metal band called High Tension, and I believe the singer is by way of Taipei or Singapore, ends up in Australia, or maybe she was born there. They are fantastically powerful, and to hear this woman
Signal's another
rip
great
her
band
vocal
with
cords
women.
out per song. Go online, you can listen to High Tension right now. They're fantastic. So there's a lot of women coming to the front. There's a great band in LA. You should see them whenever you can. They're called the CIA. And that would be Danae Siegel on vocals, and she's fantastic. So a lot of good punk rock is happening.
Great. And last.
I mean, personally, to be real, and I'm sure too, a lot of people that may be watching this that like are legit and upfront and got to call things how they are. Some of the best music being made right now, like, and I mean, like, if you're looking for that, like, fucking, like, that fucking spirit and that energy that you're really wanting, women are getting that spirit and that energy. I mean, I find myself listening to a lot of, and it's not even just by personal choice. I'm looking to get pumped and energized, and I listen to a lot of female led, you know, music projects, not just like, you know, genres, but just albums. Like even something that goes really off of the spectrum of something like punk and like hip hop and all of this. Sharon Joan and the Dap Kings, so rest in peace, Sharon. But even just such the energy and the passion and emotion of which what Sharon would bring when singing, and without getting so emotional thinking about that, is something that is like, you know, I feel like I'm glad that Henry was able to really contrast that to John Lydon's pig comment that's really uncalled for. You know, like one thing is to call yourself punk, and another thing is just to be a straight up disrespectful pig. You know.
Lastly, just Mr. Varvatos, what gives you hope for punk after doing this, coming out of this? Is there
All this crazy shit, it never ends. That's what's exciting, you know?
never gonna end?
I want
All
you
right.
all understand the love of my life, Nora.
Me?
She has Alzheimer's.
No, not me.
No.
All right.
My Nora has Alzheimer's, so when she rings, I have to answer.
All right.
You
Well,
understand that, Richard?
Yes.
And secondly, and most importantly,
This is the hard thing that I also kind of like. It's kind of hard to talk about to a degree about why, again, somebody like Johnny Rotten just, as much as there's things that like are really kind of irritating about him, there's things about him that like are really human, and humane, and make it again troubling as to why, like, as much as I want to say, oh, they can't be like, I can't necessarily want to lick his shoes or anything here, but I really find it commendable and everything that when he was crying and he was not able to really get his hold together about this, is that he takes care of his wife who's going through like Alzheimer's issues and such, and he hasn't had the best like health in the last 5 years or so, and he's been surrounded all his life by a lot of forms of death, and a lot of it hasn't even been by like drugs and the rock and roll lifestyles. I'm not justifying his derogatory comment earlier, but if we really have to play a devil's advocate to why a man who's legendary and talking so badly against drugs yet is up here drunk and doesn't realize that, ironically, I would say that a lot of the stressors that may happen from Mr. Lydon having to take care of somebody with issues that, you know, you just have to help the person out with, is one of the only things, again, too, when I watch this, as much as he annoys me, this part always does kind of get to me a little bit, and it's one of the things that really, again, in my eyes personally, humanizes him in a sense that I just, as much as I'm a critic of them, I, again, also feel bad. And if you guys ever look up to a lot of John Lydon's life history, he kind of had it a little rough, too. He was in a coma for a while, and you know, he had a kind of a bit of a go at things, and you know, the fact that whatever happened with Sid Vicious, as far as the decisions he made, he struggled greatly with drugs, and you know, a lot of the people struggled greatly with drugs. His resentment towards Marky, speaking highly about people like Richard Hell or the Heartbreakers, stuff like that, is because, to a degree, some people of this era will claim and say that, you know, when some of those artists went from New York to playing shows in the UK, besides just bringing the amazing music, they also brought the idea of maybe being more open to doing heroin. I can't necessarily speak and attest to that as a whole, but I have heard differing opinions from a lot of either punk historians or people that are musicians that have made this claim. So there is a lot of heavy things loaded with this. I know a lot of people that may not necessarily be music nerds. If you stuck around this long, obviously you are, and I thank you for having hung out with me this long. but it is one of those things that, as much as I also sort of wanted to meme on things, there is a lot of heavy history that doesn't even involve just the music, with the same way as like what some people would equate it to, like the gangster rap world, which is why there's a lot of comparisons also to these two genres in that degree, where that the idea of self-sustainability comes in. I mean, a lot of musicians of all genres want to be self-sustainable, but in the drive, in the form of wanting to enterprising, I see that, at least personally, that has always been birthed from the DIY sort of spirits that come from both hip hop and that come from both, elements of punk, is one of the things that predatorily the bigger powers that be have always tried to, you know, I guess, emulate, if you will, respectively, which I guess a lot of you watching out there that may stumble upon this have been smarter and have been sniffing out, So I got to commend a lot of you for that watch, because I think, besides what they talk about with punk and everything, one of the things personally that here for me makes me feel really comfortable, and even doing this, is that with Sight Sounds and Conversations, the music that I get and I'm given by people that are different genres, age groups, locations around the world and everything, has been one of the things that makes me feel somewhat close to hearing, not just, or not even hearing, but feeling like I have a certain sense similar to that of not just the punk spirit, but even like when people talk about early hip hop and the way in which it started up to like the mid 90s, even, I would say, with like the literal actual mixtape culture of, artists selling their actual mixtapes in the trunks of their cars or at bowling alleys, or even like people like ICP going to record stores and trying to sell them there, and if they turned them down, they'd sell them in the parking lot, as they have said in interviews before. But again, one of the big things I wanted to kind of underline throughout this whole thing here is, what did we learn today? Well, what we learned is quite simple, is that ego, legend, and all of this shouldn't really matter. What should matter is that, again, you try to keep it together enough where you don't become either Marky or Johnny here when it comes to trying to get some of your opinions or some of your perspectives out. And why do I differentiate the both? Because, some perspectives could be really well and riddled with truth, while opinions, I feel, are, again, just laden with some form of biases. You can go ahead and dispute me, and somehow, ironically, you also prove my point right in the comments. But the bigger point, going back to that, is that if you're a person that's watching this and has hung out this long and are creative, I really do implore you to try to, and I'm nobody to try to like feel like I'm somehow advising any of you how to live your life. Please do not take it as such. But I will say that if I can give one piece of advice and say, what did we learn today, is that humility is a great thing to live by. I guess, to put it nice and precise, if you will. And when trying to do something for yourself and have sustainability, always understand that you'll have peers amongst you and contemporaries, as opposed to thinking that everybody is in competition and then somehow feeling ironic about it. Because for all the defense I went and given, this man is laden with a lot of paradox, and I've always found that one of the things that personally I find distasteful about him. But hey, he does he, and I will say at the same time, he also is partly influential to me. I mean, it's pretty obvious, not just with him being influential, but my hair and style and everything. It's obvious I like that I've gone through some phase of punk. I wish Danita would have gotten more of an opportunity to speak, because I think she's been a big person that should be looked towards in a regard, as well as being able to be self-sustainable and also being enterprising enough to play a role in trying to assure that this form of metaphorical baton of continuing the arts as a thing and making sure that it's not just either looked at as a hobby or some form of odd. I don't know why to a degree, and let's not really get too political here, but globally, as seem to feel that the arts are looked at as some form of commodity, and it shouldn't really entirely be like that. And when trying to make them, uh, that being the arts, we should look at things as just an individualistic type thing. If you're doing stuff for yourself and you really feel that it's you and all, I gotta say, just perform for yourself in front of a mirror, or release stuff and listen to it. If you really think you're that great, you're gonna have to chill and not be so much like Marky and Johnny here. And with all that, this was another edition of Sides of the Internet, and I want to thank you for having hung out with us. Thank you.